one company was VSNL, and therefore the first person I would like to call is none other than Mr. S.K. Gupta. Sir, will you please come up on stage and share some stories of that time with us?
I'm totally...
You want the mic or you on the podium? Whichever.
Yeah, that's it. I'm really confused what to say here. And the manner in which I have been called, but my first interaction with voice and data formally was also very interesting, and I think he has touched upon that to some extent. I remember some awards were being given for best local service provider and best NLD service provider and best international service provider, etc. I was called from Bombay. I was at that time MD VSNL. So I was called to receive that award of best international service provider. I do not know, Pradip might remember or Mr. Ibrahim might remember, at least two I can say. I made extempore, very interesting comment at that time. I received the award for the best international long-distance service provider. Then somebody said that, please speak few words. And I didn't know what to speak. But while speaking, I suddenly said that while I am grateful and thankful on behalf of Videsh Sanchar Nigam for getting us this award, I feel that award to Videsh Sanchar Nigam for best international service provider is like Lata Mangeshkar getting the award for best female playback singer. That is what because I don't think there was any option at that particular time. So that is what I remember. Another interesting incident which recently happened in my family, very recently, since he said I should tell some interesting stories about artificial intelligence. It happened here, but the story goes back to 1984. I was posted as District Manager Telephones, Allahabad. I have two daughters. The elder one got admission in a prestigious course, BSc Computer Sciences. She was at that time about 17, 18 years old. And my younger one was studying in 5th or 6th class. So my younger daughter once was talking to elder one. We were just observing. We have no role in that, only hearing. She said, Didi, tu aajkal kya padh rahi hai computer science mein? हिंदी में कोई दिक्कत तो नहीं है ना? अच्छा, दीदी तू क्या पढ़ रही है? तो वो चुप रही. उसने कहा नहीं बता ना क्या पढ़ रही है. तो उसने कहा तेरे समझ में नहीं आएगा. उसने कहा मैं जानती हूँ नहीं आएगा समझ में, लेकिन मैं अपनी क्लास में रौब मारूंगी मेरी दीदी ये पढ़ती है. तो उसने कहा क्या बताऊँ. एनीवे शी सेड कि जो टॉपिक मैं आजकल कंप्यूटर साइंस में पढ़ रही हूँ वो है आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंस. This is in 84. When she said artificial intelligence, the younger one says, yeah, Didi, you very much need it. So, these kind of stories, I had written few technical points, but I think the way the session has gone and the way Pradip has covered most of the things and the way I am asked to come here, I am dropping all those things over here. And the only thing I can say is which I would like to mention on an interesting point, that the growth of telecommunication which took place in India would have been slightly faster. We in telecom kept on trying and trying for the separation of post and telecommunications, which took a lot of time. There were obvious interests. They were registering, and when you want to register something, it is easier to stop the thing. But ultimately, of course, it came. But I can say, usually the divorces are painful, but this particular divorce was a very, very happy divorce when it came. Because after we separated out postal and telecommunications, the growth of telecommunication in India was phenomenal. It was phenomenal. I can discuss for any number of time on that, but that is some other time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. So I would like to just say that, if you've got more anecdotes, then we would love to publish them in the next issue. So, I would request my team to sort of collect it from you. हाँ, ये तो बिल्कुल है, लेकिन उसके अलावा भी जो हैं, तो we would really love to is Mr. Akhil Gupta, has he arrived? Are, Akhil, can I request you to please come here? And can I have the next slide? Okay. Hi. So and then there was, of course, the cell phone revolution. I've just sort of taken a leap of about 2-3 years. Akhil, I know you have lots of stories to talk about. I mean, the early days when you were actually, the company was making KTSs, the key touch systems, and so on, and subsequently moving into telecom in such a big way, and then the tie-up with BT. And today again you have a tie-up with BT, but it's a reverse tie-up. At that time they had taken 40-something% equity in you. Now today that is reversed. And then, there are so many firsts that are to your credit, the change from ARPU to, but, I would like you to talk about that era and share with us some stories of, what you saw when the early days of telecom were there.
Well, thank you very much, Pradip. And first of all, big congratulations to you and your team. This
Thank
is
you.
your 30 years, my God. You are the real veteran of this industry. And thanks for this whole seminar and particularly this session. So many old friends, people who gave me the privilege of walking this wonderful telecom journey. I learned so much from so many of them. So first of all, a big thank you to all the people in this room who gave me the privilege of working with them and in making this industry what it is today. I think very clearly each one in this room knows how telecom evolved. You gave a wonderful snapshot of many of those things I had forgotten actually. But yeah, this industry has come a long way. As we all know, this is a story, like they say, इसमें comedy है, tragedy है, सब कुछ है. Everything happened in this story. So many times the industry came to an existential crisis. Companies like ours, in particular our company, went through many turmoils, and that was representative of the sector. Many of them could not survive. We somehow survived, but the journey was indeed extremely tough. Very enjoyable, but very tough. Difficult to, point out any particular anecdotes because so many of them happened. Some I would not want to mention here. But what I would like to really point out is where this industry has come from and where homegrown companies, first generation companies like Airtel, how we were able to find a spot in this industry which, frankly, we never deserved to be there. It was always a big boys club. It was something for people with deep pockets. I don't know what made Sunil come into this and what made us stick to it. But somehow we did. And starting from that one city, Delhi, and today in 17 countries, I think it's a long journey. The incident I still remember, and I very fondly remember, in this journey, we must have raised, I think, over 30 or $35 billion of capital in various forms and shapes, equity, debt, convertibles, FCCBs, you name it, the ECBs, the ECAs. But what stands out for me is a 11 crore rupee loan, which we took from IDBI when we were setting up Delhi project. And that was the time for that 11 crore loan. Both Sunil and I, and we didn't have too many people to spare, so we went, both of us. And in a room which was almost this size, with about 60 senior officials from IDBI, we made the presentation on those sheets. There was no PowerPoint at that time. And that was the toughest job of my life, at least. Getting that 11 crore is something I can just never forget, particularly because we had taken a decision we will not go through any broker. And those were the time when typically to IDBIs of the world you went through brokers. And that, I think, laid a solid foundation for this. What we believed we can do if the intent is right and your planning is right. So that was interesting. I think coming from that to a level where the market cap has just exceeded 10 lakh crores, I think it's been a very satisfying journey. But I think more satisfying is the fact that there are so many people in this journey who joined hands, supported each other. And so thank you very much for organizing this particular event. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Akhil. And the time you took to share this anecdote about 11 crores with us, your company earned 11 crores. More than that. So, that is how the scales have changed as far as this, this entire sector is concerned. May I also request the first editor of Voice and Data, Ishan, where are you? Ishan? There you are, Ishan, to just come up and share some of your memories of those early days.
Well, PG, thank you, and thank you to everyone here in the room. It is an honor. I got a call yesterday from PG, yesterday late evening, and I said, no, it'll be my pleasure, 30 years. I just have got 3 stories. I think pretty much sums up my perspective. The first story talks about the launch of Voice and Data. And I'd just come back about a year ago from Canada. I'd gone there on a scholarship. IIT Roorkee graduate, gone to Canada on a scholarship, worked there, and my parents were keen that I come back. And I did. I came back, it was a very emotional decision. I think if I'd used my head, I would have thought a lot more. And then after working for a year with HCLHP, I still remember Sudha Shastri, an IIM Calcutta graduate who was headhunting. And I think PG had given her the role and the responsibility of finding an editor. And I had 3 sessions, 3 meetings with PG. And one thing which clearly stands out for me even today is the fact that he said, are you sure you want to do this? I think in life, sometimes there are things that you do from the heart, and it's always worked for me. I said, yes, I want to do this. And this was completely transformative. Today, looking back, I just superannuated from IBM in December. I was telling PG, I said earlier on today, I said it's been so transformative that I owe him and I think Mr. Akhil Gupta, the late Mr. Akhil Gupta, his father, a lot. I'll leave that aside. But so looking at the launch of voice and data, there were two names, so three names. I don't remember the third. There was ComQuest and there was voice and data. And being an engineer, I think there are advantages. I had seen in Canada, I'd worked with Bell Northern Research, had done my master's from Montreal. I said, no, I think we should stick to voice and data. And PG and Sham both sort of agreed that, okay, because this was a positioning difference between DataQuest, PCQuest, which already were there. In fact, this was also the time when, for the first time after being a software developer in Canada, I was getting into the business side of things. As an editor and a business unit head, you not only had to manage the content and focus on the content, but also looked at, how you'd get your revenue or take care of the revenue. And it's very interesting for me to say today, but while the cover issue was on the new telecom policy, and we were talking of telecom, all our funding was actually coming from Datacom. And I think one of the clear supporters that came out from Datacom was 3Com. In fact, that was the first milestone. I think it was the third or fourth month. And I was shedding bricks before that of how this would happen. Obviously, there was a big advantage of the whole ecosystem being already created. DataQuest was there. PG had a clear view of how it would pan out and all that. But still, as a person who was conceptualizing and implementing on the ground, so this was very, very interesting. So voice and data, a lot of people used to say, what do you need data for? That's was 94. And the government was the big bull in the China shop, right?
And today people say, what is voice for? I mean, I've been told that you should name the magazine Data and Voice.
Correct. So, so much has changed. So that was the concept of the launch. The second story I have is about my understanding, and I was very grateful that it gave me a perspective of, think of it like a compass. You've got 4 quadrants and 2 arrows, one vertical, one horizontal. So in the top, you have the government, primarily the policy.
Ishan,
second,
can I request you to be quick?
Sure. The second would be on the supply side, the industry. The third, in terms of the technology. And the fourth was the demand side, the consumer side, right? So clearly, in the first few years, we were clearly focused more on the government. The policy, in fact, Vittal Saab ke saath, Sheshagiri Saab ke saath, hour and a half interviews. It was a whole story. In fact, I was having the pleasure, the privilege of 50 issues of Voice and Data, the first 50 issues. And we actually, I wrote cover stories for each and every issue. And about 10 to 15 pages. On the ground, and I think that was a big implementation plus that I got from the feedback from the industry that this is important, where you start building that understanding and those bridges. So clearly government, and then you look at the industry. And one anecdote I have is Mr. Shashi Lal was at that time the managing director of Modi Olivety. And I think after 4 months, he called me to his office and he said, Ishan, I want to meet you. I said, coming from a perspective of being hands-on, I said, sir, sure, I'll come. And I ended up spending about 3 hours with him. And he would have a copy and he would make notes. And I found it very interesting that the managing director of Modi Olivety, who moved to Hughes after that, he actually asked me questions and he wrote down answers. I find it very, very impressive and very, very surprising and humbling, because he saw in me the fact that I had an understanding of how the industry was evolving.
Ishan,
And the third, yes,
seconds.
the last, is the team. I think Rachna was there, so I think a big round of applause for her. 30 years, And I think we had a great team, great for PG, and I think we lost one of our colleagues, Shamanuja Das. But thank you very much. It's been a great journey and a
Thanks.
great learning. Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks, Ishan. I mean, Ishan has, of course, lots of stories to share because of those early days. So, but you know, because of time, I had to sort of cut you short. Can we have the next slide, please? So the cell phone rush, and then you know the internet boom. That is the time when, well, it was not the boom really, because at that time there were still debates going on whether the world is going to be PC centric or the world is going to be internet centric. So that debate was very much on, and number of leaders today had not adopted the internet. Okay, but in India, ISPs started. The government of India gave licenses for 1 rupee to a lot of people. Then, you know, Satcom actually started around that time also use. And so we have some persons of that era. And therefore, Rajesh, may I request you to share a few stories about that time?
Thank you very much, PG. I remember the day when the license was being privatized, and very frankly, we were in competition with the VSNL. And till date, VSNL is now not treating us as a competitor, but a helping hand. But the BSNL is still treating us competitor. Anyway, we started, I have taken personally the license category C of Ghaziabad SSA. The attitude of the VSNL after privatization has not changed. And this incident I am speaking. I taken a 2 MB line, 20 lakh rupee annual bandwidth charges, and I was standing in the queue.
Sorry to just interrupt you for a second. Just to sort of tell you, a 2 MB line was big at that time, right?
Very big.
Please remember that Texas Instruments satellite connectivity was at 64 kbps, right? So, you know, I mean, today we carry gigabytes in our pocket. So I just sort of thought that I will. Country was there on 2 MB.
I'm correcting myself, 20 lakh not per year. It was 20 lakh for a quarter, 80 lakh per year. And for taking a 20 lakh draft, I was standing on the gate of VSNL and they refused to accept my payment, saying, पहले demand note बनवा के लेके. और if आज की डेट में अगर मैं फोन कर दूं टाटा कम्युनिकेशन को कि आपका 1 लाख का चेक तैयार है तो तुरंत भागा भागा आ जाता है. So this was the incident with the VSNL, my personal incident. But the day I taken over as the president of the ISPI 20 years back, from the very first day I was struggling to get internet voice to our license. And we got succeeded. Thank you very much, sir. After your recommendation, we have got this ITSP, Internet Telephony Service Providers license in 2004. And then the development started. And at that time, I have told to few of the cellular operator guys that very soon we will take over you. Because they were relying only on the voice and we were relying only on the data. And after some time, nowadays, we are seeing that the data is the king. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I also talked about the earlier days of satellite communications. Mr. Shivaji Chatterjee is here. Would you like to, you've been with Hughes for a very, very long time. So would you like to just...
So firstly, congrats on the 30 years.
Thank you.
In August 1994, we were the first data licensee as a SATCOM player And in February, we'll complete our 30 years of service. As you said, at that time, data was precious. We used to run networks of hundreds of sites on 5 and 10 kbps, and it was a science and art and fiction how it was managed. And today you have a satellite connection where one connection gives hundreds of megabits. So definitely it's a big change. When we looked at, our first site we were commissioning in Feb 95 was for Hindustan Lever for their ERP, and we couldn't get it up for 2 days. And then an engineer, senior, the head of operations went there, and he saw that the engineers there were pointing the two dishes at each other and not at the satellite, because that was so new in the country. So it was that was something which always makes us smile, because whenever new technology comes and you get people who don't have that expertise, they bring whatever they have. But it's come a long way to now auto commissioning and different sophistication which is there. So that's it. I'll say congratulations again.
Thank you.
It's 30 years for everyone, for me in the industry, for cyber media, and for the VSAT and telecom industry. Many congrats.
Thank you. Thank you. Can I have the next slide, please? Okay, back to the future. So this is from the 100th issue of Data Quest, right? And Ibrahim Ahmad is here with us. He just conducted the previous panel. Ibrahim, would you like to say a few words?
They will catch. But let me narrate an inside story. And that was about voice and data. And that was to do with the designing of the magazine. You see, every 3 or 4 years, we used to redesign the magazine. The grids, the masthead, the grids, then the way headlines are put, the way subheads are there, the way the picture and the text ratio on every page, and so on and so forth. So there was a friend of my boss, PK Roy. I don't know if he's here in the hall.
Yeah, PKR is here.
So
Yeah.
So we went to him, and he was a expert designer. And in the first meeting, PKR was also there, and we said, okay, the magazine needs to be revamped and all. And some of those discussions, I think, or debates, PG just mentioned that should it be voice only, or should it be data only, or should it be first data and then voice? And somebody said you should have video on voice, data, and video. So with that perspective and background, we went to PKR's friend, who had his office somewhere far away at that time. It was in Noida, if I remember correctly. And on the first visit, I think everybody from the team, because
So that was Jamna Par.
Jamna Par. So everybody from the team, we went to his office, and he was a little sort of taken aback. He said, "कि यार ये तो problem होगी, इतने सारे लोग मुझे बताने वाले हैं कि क्या करना है, कैसे करना है." But I think over the next few meetings, things settled down. But it was so we had this is also one of those old covers, but this is the story that I'm telling you is, I think, after this. So one of my bosses was Mr. Shyam Malhotra. He was the managing editor of the magazine, and one day he called me to his room and he said कि यार ये क्या बकवास कवर है, अब तक तुमने चेंज नहीं किया है, और सब हमारे कवर्स चेंज हो जाते हैं, डिज़ाइन चेंज होता है, कुछ नहीं किया तुमने इसमें ये वो. That's when I ran to PKR, and PKR said, okay, let's go to get this redesigned. So he had said that you have to get this redesigned, so we went to him, to the designer, and then you can well imagine that Ishan was talking about Shamanuj. Shamanuj had his own passion. He was passionate about one aspect of technology, and we had Praveen Prashant. He was passionate about something else. And then we said, okay, so we are not reaching a consensus. Let's do some simple random survey, and let's reach out to people. And then we were sort of even more confused. Somebody said, यार इसमें तो इसमें ये भी है, ये भी इसमें pager आ गया है, pager इसमें नहीं डला है, so there should be a pager also. And that was the time. And I think one thing that PKR was very passionate about at that time was convergence. So he would see convergence in everything. He will say, yaar, isme convergence. So initial first or two drafts that we took to PKR, he rejected all of them. He said, "यार इसमें convergence नजर नहीं आ रहा इसमें." So we said, okay, so convergence मतलब then somebody said, यार fiber optic भी आ गया, इसमें fiber optic भी घुसाओ, इसमें कहीं से दिखना चाहिए. So then satellite phones came. तो पेजर एक तरफ satellite phones के यार इसमें satellite phone भी कहीं दिखना चाहिए. So it became a complete खिचड़ी. And by that time, the designer, I am forgetting his name, he was PKR's good friend, and he was, I think, tearing his hair. He said, "यार कहाँ फंस गया मैं? This is taking me nowhere." And he was wasting a lot of his. He thought he was wasting a lot of his time and his team's time in getting the redesign. So anyway, I think we did some 7-8 drafts, final drafts, 7-8 of them, and we presented to the board. PG was there, PKR was there. All of them super complex according to me. I thought all of them were very, very complex and complicated, full of all the elements which everybody was betting on that this is going to be the future and this is going to be the future. So finally, one was selected as the final one, on which we had the concurrence of all the big bosses. And it was, we told that gentleman that, okay, this is the one that is final. And then we all came back happily and we were celebrating कि अब हो गया. We got over a big exercise. And then the first issue, that first issue with the new design came, and I got a call from, I had reached office, I still remember I had reached office a little late, and I got a call from Shyam saying, "यार ये क्या है? Is this the new design?" I said, "Yes." Then I ran up to him, I said, "It was the old design with some minor, it was one of the first drafts." So what he had told us, इतना confusion था, the designer, he said कि यार तुम लोग decide करके just मेरे लिए message छोड़ देना कि कौन सा, just tell me the number जो होना है. And I think in that entire thing of me telling him and he also being sort of totally confused and sort of given up, I think some wrong final design was approved, was forwarded to him, and that is what got printed. And but finally we all said कि यार जो हमने चुना था उससे तो अच्छा ही लग रहा है. Thank you so much.
So accidental things always happen. Thanks a lot. Can I have the next?
So the telecom industry at one point in time was like this.
Yes, absolutely. The telecom industry also resulted into lots of offshoot industries coming out of it. So call centers was, the entire ITES services that arose was primarily because of the backbone which was provided by the telecom industry here. Next one, please. So I'm now coming to the turn of the millennium. Bandwidth. Bandwidth was I still remember this conference where we talked about bandwidth for the first time. PKR is here, and I'm sure he'll share those stories. And then after that, NASCOM picked it up, and Dimang, of course, converted it into a slogan also, Roti Kapda Makan or Bandwidth. Ye chahiye desh ko. So this was the kind of a thing which was happening. The next slide, please. We started the Gold Book in 2002 to talk about what were the products and services available. The next one, please. No, so let's just remain on the previous one. Can we go back to the previous slide? And to talk about this particular time period, I would request Mr. Pradip Baijal, because, you got into TRA around this time. 2003 is, I think, the year when you got into TRAI as chairman of TRAI. So, a huge round of applause for him. And, sir, we would like you to share some of your remembrances of that time, some of your...
Good afternoon. Is it working?
Yeah, it is. Sir, do you need a chair or something that I should? Okay.
I'm not sure. I got this invitation yesterday in the afternoon, and I wondered why so late. And the subject was you, because of my entire life. Not my entire life, post 2000, post 2003. How will I talk? But then people suggested that, thank you. People suggested you do two things. So I've done both.
If you want to use the podium, you can use the
People
podium.
suggested that I should do two things, which I've done both. One, that I should bring Harsh with me. Harsh is here somewhere. Harsh.
Yeah.
There. I should bring Harsh with me. Because when I joined Telecom Regulatory Authority, I didn't know anything about it. Harsh was the secretary. And he guided me all the time. Whenever I went somewhere, I took Harsh with me. There was another advantage with Harsh. Another advantage was that he was a non-telecom. He was from some other discipline and he came from Geneva. And so he could interpret very well what people like to say, which I didn't understand. So I brought Harsh here, and I want an assurance from the organizers that even today I don't understand telecom. And whenever I need, Harsh will interpret for me or he will speak for me. Because he was the main guiding force behind TRI all the time. There's another story which I want to share. S.K. Gupta, BSNL, was my class fellow in Roorkee. And that was some advantage. I was a bureaucrat, but I knew something about telecom because of my Roorkee IIT background. And Indra Sen was my teacher. So, but even
Sir,
then...
Professor Indra Sen was my teacher also.
Oh, great.
At IIT Delhi.
He was so many people's teacher. And the president, Shri Abdul Kalam, also used to treat him as his teacher.
Absolutely.
So, my time was spent most of the time with Harsh, and for a brief while, he left TRI, went back to Geneva, and then came back at my insistence. The other story I was telling about S.K. Gupta. S.K. Gupta was my class fellow. When I became Secretary Disinvestment, the first company that I started disinvesting was his company. And so he came to me, "You've been my class fellow, why are you disinvesting my company?" So I said, "Look, Gupta, if I am able to disinvest your company, let me assure you, I have worked with Tatas for a long time in the steel ministry, that you will be a very lucky man and you will be 10 times richer." I've been asking him after he retired from Tata's, how much more has he made? Because I intend asking him for a share, so he's obviously not shared that figure with me. But he did. I was very thrilled that Ratan Tata felt very proud of having S.K. Gupta either as his MD or as his advisor. And I'm sure you are right when I treated you, according to you, very unfairly. I treated you very badly, that now you are happy with my behavior. Third story I want to share is with Akhil Gupta. He's here. I hope he's not gone out.
Yeah, he's here.
I was again Secretary Disinvestment, and I went to a conference in Bombay. And it was a huge conference. And at that time, disinvestment was very popular, and I had just completed one disinvestment, and it was a house full. And I don't know how this telecom man was leading that function. And we discussed disinvestment, etc., general discussions, and he knew about disinvestment. And then I came away. Little later, I realized that I became chairman TRI, and he immediately came to see me, old time's sake, etc. So I discussed with him. Again, a few days after that, Madam Ho came to my office. Madam Ho is, I think, the present Prime Minister's wife in Singapore. So somewhere. She was a great lady. So she came to my office. And she was discussing the regulation that I was bringing out. At that time, it was famous that I was bringing out a new regulation which was away from the main path. And she was very nervous. And she was obviously nervous because she was giving him a check of $2 billion that day. And she came to me she had, I think, come with her secretary. I think Kejriwal was her secretary. And she asked me, look, Mr. Baijal, I'm giving a check of $2 billion, and I'm very nervous because you're bringing in a new regulation. And I don't know whether it will be advantageous or disadvantageous for Airtel. Should I give the check or should I wait for the new regulation? I said, if you wait in India for the new regulation, you will wait forever. One. Two, that if you are doubtful about anything, then you will be doubtful forever. I can only assure you that I have written this regulation, of course, with the help of Harsh, but basically with the help of Analysis Mason, with the help of the British telecom company, and with the help of Oftel, which had become Ofcom. Here also, in Britain also, they had changed. And I knew a lady who was my earlier minister, Kumaramangalam's sister. She gave me about 10 days. And this Ofcom also gave me a lot of time. And I've discussed with all these people, and I'm very happy with my regulation. And let me very honestly tell you, you give this $2 billion, please say thank you. You give this $2 billion. A couple of days back, a news item appeared which said that $2 billion has been paid off by Airtel. And I was again very thrilled. I rang him up, but he never took my telephone. You can check up with your PA. So you were to call me back, but you never did. So I was very thrilled because I had done that paper with great care. It was my first paper. I was earlier the managing director. I had set up Optel in Madhya Pradesh, a highly successful company. So I was very clear that this deviation that I am making should be carefully done. And I issued this, I went to the committee of secretaries, the cabinet, etc. They approved it. Of course, people had doubts. But the regulation was approved and the UASL was approved. United Services License, instead, UASL, which I had proposed, was approved. Why I had proposed UASL? Because USL had got stuck in politics. It had got stuck in the parliamentary committee. I went and met the chairman also, who later on became the speaker. And I was sure that this regulation will never be issued. And if the regulation is not issued, then telecom sector, when I retired 3 years later, would be the same as the telecom sector that I joined. And I asked everyone, all the technocrats, and I asked Harsh, and everyone, no one had any clue. So I went to Oftel, I went to Ofcom, etc., etc. I went everywhere. And I said, look, in 1994, when the new Act came, Act you referred, for 3 years it was in courts because we could not implement it. 1997, the High Court of Delhi, gratefully, said you implemented this afternoon. And then there was huge rush, and Justice Sodhi was appointed, and Mr. Joshi was appointed, etc., etc. And yet, the new trial, there were hundreds of defects. You had to create a TD set, and that was created, but it took a lot of time. When I joined in 2002, the rate of growth was 1%, 2%. The total tele-density was 2%, 3%. The mobile tele-density was only touching. And I thought, what will happen to this sector? So I thought, as was advised to me by the American regulator, Harsh had taken me to the American regulator, that look, you fellows can't do anything. The tariffs are very high, the ADC is very high, the prices are very high, this is very high, that is very high. So I thought about it, what should I do? So I thought the only possibility was one. And the possibility was that reduce the ADC, reduce the prices, reduce everything in the telecom sector. And I did that. If I give you all the mechanics, I'll waste the entire session. I will not. So I reduced everything and issued the new regulation. When the new regulation was issued, hell broke loose. There were cases in the Supreme Court, there was cases in the parliamentary committee, there were inquiries set up against me, not against Harish who wrote the whole thing. So I faced all that. But the result was phenomenal. Result was phenomenal. In days, the sector jumped. Again it jumped. Again it jumped. And from figures of 2%, 3%, etc., we became 20%, 30%. And today, the Prime Minister said yesterday perhaps that we are 80%, 90%, etc., etc. Another thing which had happened was that there used to be a lot of dispute between telecom and telephony, that who will be the regulator. Ultimately, the government appointed the telecom regulator as the TV regulator also. Broadband also came in this. And then we discovered what was JAM. JAM was written by Raoul Paul, a European technocrat. JAM was Jandhan, A was Aadhaar, and M was mobile. But it was not really mobile, it was the new mobile. So JAM was discovered. And then, of course, this unpopular measure came. And that unpopular measure was much later. But that unpopular measure came of demonetization. Demonetization helped a lot because ATMs got established in villages. The village Sahukar was replaced by the ATM. And today, and I think yesterday, the Prime Minister said that we have reached 90% in telecom, fixed line, etc., etc. And all these connections could also be wireless connection thanks to the new mobile. So all these things happened, but they were accidental and lots of people helped me. And ultimately, I was successful. But then I am not a student of philosophy or politics. I had not read Machiavelli. Machiavelli was that Italian philosopher in 1700 who had said that whoever reforms the system is dead. He'll be killed. I thought I'm a very bright fellow. I'll not be killed. But I was killed. I was killed. I almost went to jail. But of course, no inquiry started against me. But it was hell for me at that time. Machiavelli was proven absolutely correct. And Machiavelli had said that what Mahabharata has said and what Ramayana said is also right. He said, number one, the reformer should be feared by everyone. So at that time, the reformer was not feared by anyone. As a matter of fact, his boss, Sunil Mittal, can I mention his name here? I treat that you represent him, so I can mention his name.
Yes, yes.
Otherwise, I would never mention his name. I have not mentioned this story for the last 20 years, 30 years. Sunil wrote to me that, look, you've been partial to one of the, to some of the networks. You might have given him the draft. I was surprised. I was surprised that a chairman would write to Chairman Try such a rude letter that you have been. Oh, okay. He wrote. You may have given him the draft, I said. so, but I was very surprised for two reasons. So I was very surprised for two reasons. Number one, that how could Sunil Mittal write a letter to a government chairman? I was also very surprised that here is an honest man who has the guts to tell me on my face. And now I am replying to that. I have not replied so far. That measure of mine at that time led to the entire $2 billion loan being repaid to Singapore. That measure of mine made the entire sector so efficient and competitive. He had a monopoly. He lost the monopoly. But he also progressed in that famous curve, which I show everywhere, that how the telecom sector increased. And after that, he smiles at me. He doesn't look angry at me. Uh, Now, let me also say one story, which is since Analysis Mason is here, they were our first consultants. And Analysis Mason came to me and said, "Sir, we will look at all the data of telephones and give you the answer." So I said, "My goodness, these fellows are going to look at the data of 1 million telephones and then give me the answer?" Now I mock at myself that now people are looking at 1 trillion of data and giving me the answers, and the entire AI is based on that examination of data. And data has become the most important thing in this world and in India. So I look at the telecom sector of having created that change in this world. I have to end the talk now, otherwise I'll be reminded by the chairman here. I thought that I deserved more time, my entire life being reduced to 5 minutes. But one last item. I'm writing 3 more books. And my children asked me, "Why are you so busy?" I said, "Look, I have never been busier in my life." Because earlier, when I wrote the books, I had companies with me, and I had technocrats and everyone who gave me a para, and I edited it, etc. I'm now writing on my own, and I find I'm not good enough. And my memory is also failing because of old age, nothing else. And but the books are interesting, and I'm very excited about the books. One is on green power. According to me, one of the reasons that India will go forward is green power. China went ahead in this world because of the foolishness of United States of America, who agreed to partner them because Mao and Deng made a fool of Nixon. And Nixon had a grudge towards Indira Gandhi, and in writing, he has said that she was a witch. So he had a grudge, and he never wanted, the United States wanted a populous country as their partner. And they agreed to have China as their partner. And China went ahead at such speed, Deng being the hero, that at the end of 2016, USA started thinking of the measures, and Trump said that I'll fix China. Of course, he couldn't fix China and he lost the election. I don't know what will happen in this election. But China went ahead because of a technological partnership, and they performed extremely well. I've written a book. But this is what happened. Now, I'm trying to write another book, which is what will happen in the future. What is happening in the future? Post Taiwan, post South China crisis, post Ukraine crisis, post so many crises in the world. Today it's a very competitive and a fighting world. It's no longer the Sharif world that used to be. After the Second World War, United States had made, first in the Second World War, League of Nations, United Nations, World Bank, IMF, etc., which ran the world, which regulated the world. In the present revolution, there is no, or no one is trying to make the third world because the country does not have a supremacy like US had post the Second World War. No, unless new institutions are created, which many authors have written about, nothing happened in this world. So we are waiting who will win the next election and what will the US do? Because that is the intellectual capital of the world. We've started trying to touch them, and we are quite successful.
Thank you.
1950 changed this
Sir-
world. 1950 changed this world because broadband, telecom, TV, digital transactions, money transactions, banks, everything came on Gen. Everything came on Gen. And the world was being run by the mobile in your pocket. Your entire world was in the mobile. Even my maid wouldn't take a payment. She said, "नहीं, Paytm कर दीजिए उसका." The currency is 89% in your telephone, big companies or small companies. So what will happen in the world, since I have experience of so many sectors, I have started doing that. Green power,
Sir.
can I take one more minute?
Yeah, please.
Green power I have started writing because green power is not power. I have been in the power sector for many, many years. But green power is not power. Green power is not renewable power. I've been in the renewable power also for a number of years. I've been in hydropower for a number of years. But green power is none of it. Green power is that between the last industrial revolution and last year, the world temperatures went up by 6 degrees, or 5.5 degrees. And the world has collapsed. Already you are seeing the world has collapsed. You open the TV and there is floods everywhere, etc., etc. So now they're saying in the last few years after the first industrial revolution, the temperatures have gone up by 1.5 degrees. Sorry, I gave the wrong figure. In the last, from the ice age, the world temperatures have gone up by 6 degrees. In the last 500 years, the world temperatures have gone by 1.5 degrees. If the world temperatures go up by another 2 degrees, we will not be living. But even then, countries like in the commercial interests say that we will not we will not follow the Paris Accord. So world is changing very fast, but no one person who has experience of only power sector or renewable power sector or the MNES or the mining sector can write a book. Fortunately for me, I've spent all my life in the reform sector. And therefore, I think I have a little more knowledge than others, and I'm trying to write a book on the green power. Let us see whether I can finish. And I hope you call me to that session.
Thank you. Thank you. A big round of applause, Mr. Pradip Baijal. Thank you, sir. And whichever other anecdotes which are there, I will take it from you and we will definitely publish it in the next issue of the magazine. May I now request, the speakers that I will be calling to sort of, speak for 4 minutes because, we are running behind schedule. So can I have the next slide, please? And Reliance changed India, and therefore, who better to talk about some of the Reliance stories than you, Mr. Das?
I'm sorry, Pradeep, I came prepared for a 5-minute speech.
Take 5 minutes.
And I have no stories to tell about Reliance.
Okay, all right.
So everything that I tell you will be from something else.
Okay.
So, congratulations to everybody. 30 years of telecom and 30 years of cyber world with you. I'm just remembering that 30 years has been like a blur, Akhil. It's just passed by. And we were the early troopers in this business. So I have a lot of fondness for Akhil in particular. I don't know whether it's reciprocated, but it's surely from my side. In my lifetime, I saw the building of a business, and in half a lifetime, I saw the building of a telecom czar in Sunil Mittal. I was 35 years old when I was made India's first private telecom CEO to run a paging business in 1994. And I think Sunil and Akhil are the same vintage. So it's been a long time. We were 958 million people, 28 million fixed line phones. I don't know how we ever picked up children from school, how we met in lobbies, how we made appointments. I have no idea at all. I will share with you 2 or 3 interesting stories. I don't know whether they're anecdotes, but they're stories about paging first, because that's where telecom really started. So I I was told in those days that, not told, but I knew that if you wanted to cover a city of Chandigarh for paging, all you needed was 7 towers. Nowadays we need for telecom we need, for mobile we need 7 towers on one spot. But there were 7 towers for the whole city. And you needed to get an approval from 14 agencies. Air Force, Navy, Army, ICRISAT, ISRO, Air India, everybody, All India Radio, everybody. And you had to go to everybody with your application. So I remember having sat down at the back of the scooter of my general manager from Chandigarh, and we went some 14 kilometers or 20 kilometers into a deep jungle near Chandigarh to find one ISRO office to get an approval. And later on, I remember that with Amit Sharma, ex-Motorola, and then later on American Towers, we set up the SACFA Advisory Committee, and there's to be a wireless planning advisor called Mr. Chaudhary. And during his time, we asked people how to understand what this draconian term called SACFA was. Later on, people were just rolling out networks without SACFA, but that's another story. So when I went to this DOT general manager, and please, I must put a little caveat here. I mean no offense to the gentleman. But I went to meet him, and I was told, I'm a mechanical engineer, but I was in telecom by mistake. And I went to look for something called an E1. So I was told that I have rightful this thing to get an E1. So I went to the general manager, I said, mujhe ek E1 line chahiye. So he said, kis liye? Because those days it was impossible to ask the government for anything. So I said, look, I'm like your damad, mere ko to license mila hai, aap hi ka damad hu main, I've got a license. So he looked at it, he said, kya hai aapka business? He says, pager. He looked at it and he said, acha, isme bolte kahan se hain? That was not meant to offend the gentleman, but that was the state of awareness that we all had in the country on something like telecom. So it's very important for people in today's generation to understand what we were battling against at that time. With paging, I perhaps also started India's first call center. There was no such thing as a call center in those days. And we used to recruit these low middle class ladies and boys from all over the country and train them to become operators. And everybody knows how pagers work. So you get a message, and then you record it and you type it. One day I was sitting in my office and with my customer service head, and one girl walked in. She was, of course, what they call in South India, one pavam girl. And she walked in and she was terribly scared. She was all flushed in her face. And she said, so my customer service lady said, what happened? She says, madam, I cannot send this message. So why can't you send this message? No, madam, I cannot. She was shivering from total. She says, one lady has sent a message to a gentleman, and he says, what is the message? He says, let's have a bite together. So she was shocked. So she didn't know what bite together meant. She took it literally. And then we had to actually organize sessions where we had to teach these girls bad words, because you are not allowed to use offensive words. You are not allowed to use words that were derogatory. You couldn't announce death. You couldn't announce anything bad on pagers. So that was one of the things that was very, very important. One fine day, later on, of course, I moved to cellular and we did mobile business. And like somebody said, fixed lines reach fixed line phones, but mobile phones reach people. And that's where India changed as a nation.
Absolutely.
And I remember that, let's switch on to cellular. I had a very excitable boss, whom everybody knows, called Ashim Ghosh. And I'm taking advantage of the fact that he's not in the room. So when Ashim was MD, I was deputy MD. I was running the operations, and he was actually dealing with DOT and everybody else. So he had the honor of meeting Mr. Baijal a lot more than I did. So one fine day, if you remember, there was a fateful day in Bombay in 2006 when there was a flood and the entire Bombay came to a standstill. That day I get up in the morning and I look at the newspaper, and the newspaper Times of India carries an ad saying, 5 people who have let down this city. Chief Minister, Mayor of the city, Anil Ambani, because his power company ran the business, and Ashim Ghosh. So I came back into my room and I sat, and Ashim comes stomping into my room, completely angry. He says, Sandip, kal se Times of India ko ek ad nahi milega. I said, Ashim, calm down, sit down. Have you realized what has happened? You are now an essential service. Please understand, we have turned a new leaf. We are no longer a mobile company. We are now the requirement of people. And the reason I'm relating these anecdotes is because these anecdotes, in a sense, give you a feel of what telecom did to people. I mean, you all know, I cannot let this moment pass by just telling anecdotes, but to also talk about the fact, about the contribution, about the grit, the determination, and the gumption with which all of us sat. You know, Akhil will recall the fact, of course, he will recall everything. He knows everything to a dot. We were friendly operators because 4 of us formed what is called World One Net, and the other 4 who got the license for the metros were the other group. We used to exchange plastic cards for roaming because there was no roaming. So they used to keep a bunch of Airtel cards with us. We used to keep a bunch of our cards with them. And every time one senior corporate guy went out of the country, we actually gave him a phone with a particular frequency, because that was the frequency that was used there. And I remember that the first time that Sanjay Kapoor and Deepak Gulati joined, Sunil called us and said, Sandeep, you guys have launched something called a prepaid business called ACE. Can you please show these guys how to do prepaid business? So that's how prepaid business has. These days it's another matter that Sanjay Kapoor lectures me on prepaid, but his memory is very short. But that's another matter. But that's how much we built. But I must say, in that entire struggle, I'm sorry, I'm reminded of this little analogy. When Japan was being attacked from outside of the world, they had a weak emperor. The samurais were very strong. They all got together and said, listen, let's defend Japan first. And over a period of 200s, they kept defending Japan against the foreign invader, and they forgot about Hirohito and the emperor, and they became a strong nation. That's exactly what we did in telecom. We said, let's just keep the framework right, the regulation right, and then so we created a fraternity, which I'm extremely proud of today. One last thing that I would say, so congratulations to everybody. We fought fierce battles in the marketplace, but we were very, very friendly all the time. So I know that we are short on time. So I will just like to say one more thing is that this is a moment where I feel very philosophical. And the reason being that the amount of change that just single industry has brought together in this country is just unparalleled. Like roads were to America, telecom phones were to us. And now we no longer talk about things being mobile phones. We are calling them terminal devices. We're talking of, and so many things. There's one little story, sorry. One day, my 13-year-old daughter came running into my room and said that you must see this uncle's phone. I have never seen something like this in my life. We must buy one. It was an old black Bakelite phone. She had never seen it because she was 13 years old. And then I realized that the word dial had become obsolete. There was no such thing called dial anymore in our lives. There's no such thing as pushing buttons.
Yeah.
When could we have imagined that if you do this, your picture will get larger? If you do this, your picture will change? Human actions. So we have seen so much. I can go on and on. Our future is extremely exciting with AI and everything happening. We are no longer, our business had morphed several times. We are no longer in the business of mobiles, pagers, this, that, etc. We're in the business of networks. Networks are talking to networks. They say, finally, I would say that lives are connected when one person is connected to another. But when everything is connected to everything, life itself changes. So I think we are happy that we are part of this wonderful business. It's vibrant, exciting, intoxicating. Would I want to be in another business? Never.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. Huge round of applause. Uh, so, cheese has already been served. Wine is just coming. And may I request you to just hold on to the wine? Because I think we can just toast for 30 years of the industry once the glasses are all served on each of the tables. Okay? So, can I have the next cover, please? Perhaps I will also speed up. So BSNL, King BSNL, that was the #1 fixed operator at that time. Okay, can I have the next one? Cisco challenges. Cisco became the network solution provider to the entire industry. And thanks Cisco for supporting us for this particular event, and thanks Airtel for supporting us for this celebration evening. Next, please. And now this is 10 years from that earlier snapshot that I presented. The names have changed. So BSNL, of course, some of them are still there. BSNL, MTNL, Bharti Televentures, VSNL, Reliance Infocom, Idea Cellular, Data Access, Hutch, Tata Teleservices, and Tata. And then you have Nokia, LG, Ericsson, Motorola, Cisco, Lucent, ITI, TCS, Wipro, and Infosys. So it's a very different kind of list that you see here. Next, please. Nokia was the #1 mobile provider in this country with a market share which used to be in the 70–80%. That was the kind of dominant role that they had. Next, please. Then 3G. And by the way, this is interesting. Will India beat China? I think this is a question that we are still asking. But this is the cover of which year is this cover? I think almost about 20 years back when 3G was being launched. But I think today, even today, we are asking. Absolutely. So, I mean, we're still finding an answer to that particular question. The next one, please. Infrastructure. So, a whole lot of infrastructure sharing happened. And I have two people who were part of that entire infrastructure sharing which was there. Mr. Shantharaju, there he is. Please, will you come here? And Mr. Umang Das, you are also there. So may I request you to please, both of you can come and may I request that instead of 4 minutes, please put 8 minutes here. No, and I think you will, and yeah, one of them would be there.
He spent all his 30 years in telecom industry, so he must be. I'm a child in front of you. Over to Umang.
So hello everybody, and congratulations to you, PG, for having organized this, where we can all recall the 30 years gone by. I'd like to, given the fact that we are sharing time and all that, I'd like to talk first on sharing. I had two topics which I wanted to talk about. One about the first mobile call in India, but then you have already arrived in 2004, so there's no point in going back to 1994.
No, but please, feel free.
I'll come to that later, but since Shanta and I are together, in the context of infra sharing, I'd like to take it forward from what our friend Sandip Das was talking about, fraternity amongst the operators. You see, in the year 2002, 2003, Spice Telecom, the company which I was driving, there the question was that we were competing against big giants. And we had to see how do we find a place under the sun. So it was in that context we thought that obviously apart from revenue growth, the other aspect is cost optimization. And one of the things that we talked about was how can we share towers? Tower at that time, every site was 1 crore per site approximately. So we hit upon the idea that can we share towers? Because tower sharing will lead to a win-win proposition, both for the tower company, because they will make more money by having more people sharing the same tower. And for the operators, by virtue of the fact that they will get somebody else to do their job, their rollout will be faster, and to that extent, revenue growth will happen. So it is in that context that we decided to go ahead with this tower sharing story with an infrastructure provider called Shrey Quipo, who later on tied up with Tata to make it Tata Quipo. But at that time, we were Shrey Quipo, and my colleague and friend who was on the Quipo side, who was earlier in Modi Xerox. So he was a connect, and they were a Calcutta-based infrastructure company who had made towers. So we engaged with them, and we said that you are making towers, and you are trying to see how you can maximize utilization of the tower. And we guys are in the mobile industry, and we would be happy if the same tower can be shared by 2 people or 3 people. So he was obviously a young man, entrepreneurial. He said, yeah, let's go ahead and do it. So we went ahead in Punjab, the license that we had, and we went into a sale and lease back model by which the first 50 towers we rolled out in the year 2004 in Punjab. Now the concept was sharing, it was not just a question of rolling out. So we had to look at Hutch. Hutch, Asim Ghosh, was there as the managing director. And that's why I'm carrying it forward from what our friend Sandip Das was talking about fraternity. Arun Kapoor and I went to Asim Ghosh and said that why don't we share these towers? And they had come in as a new operator. We were already the first operator in Punjab. So he didn't quite like the idea. He said, what's the point? Why should I share? I am already cash rich. I don't have an issue. I said, you may be cash rich, but that doesn't mean you have to waste cash. If you can use the same infrastructure. And then we were friends. So he said, well, you're a friend. You're saying that. Let's do that. So he and we shared the first 50 towers which came up in Punjab. And that was in the year 2004. And that is how the whole concept of sharing started. And a big bang thing happened in 2006 when we had the multi-operator shared tower concept. And this was set up in Delhi, Rajokri. 6 operators shared that. And that is how the whole concept of sharing of towers took birth, which today is 800,000 plus towers. And a completely new industry, which was not there. Because earlier on, everybody was very cozy about his own towers. So within 1 meter, there will be 3 towers will be coming up. We said instead do it the other way around, that in 1 tower, 3 people can share. And that's, I thought, will be a very good example of fraternity working together and seeing what is in the best interest of the industry. So this is on the tower sharing. And I request our friend Shanta to take it forward. Because he then became...
Thank you. Thank you, Umang. Thank you. I think I must personally say that I'm a child in the telecom industry. I worked only for 7 years. Thanks to Akhil, who is sitting here, and some headhunter cajoled me to join. I was the CEO of the Delhi airport. I was in thick and thin of it. Then I did not know this business at all, very honestly. And I joined. And I still remember this was the world's largest startup on the day 1. 3 telecom operators put 67,000 towers, handed over to this baby called Indus Towers. This poor baby never walked. It started running from the day 1 of its formation. With 67,000 towers built over the period of 20 years, this company built 36,000 towers in its very first year. Somehow, how we did it, we don't know, to be honest with you. Lag gaya. Then we were in the thick and thin of it. I still remember one day, one of the tower personality of the telecom industry asked me on a lunch table, what do you think about the quality of people we have in our company? I just told him, there's so much of tailwind, any Johnny will fly. Let the headwind come, we'll figure it out, who are the boys, who are the men. This was in 2010. Then came the 12 license. Then came the headwind. Many whom I have seen in 2010, I did not see them in 2030. Many of those boys vanished. Only men stood like Akhil. But during that time, I have taken a lot of beating. Because we allowed everybody to share the tower. If there was no tower, all these new Johnnies would not have existed in the market. So the beating I used to get, why are you giving towers? You are our company, you are creating the competitor for us. I said, look, I'm in the business of sharing. Okay, I will give it to all the players. Anyway, that was a good, bad, regularly, that's the way which happened. That's the way the revolution happened. When this company was formed, and I was to become a CEO, one of my well-wishers told me, don't leave Delhi airport. This so-called strategic innovation is doomed to fail. His demise is written. Don't join. Much against his willingness, my well-wisher, I joined. Thanks to people like Akhil, Sanjeev Aga, who is not here, and Martin Peters, we really flew. And he was my first chairman, Akhil. And most important thing is this. This revolution called the Indus Tower, when it happened, there was none of put their company towers into a separate company and started. Today, there are more than 200 tower companies in the world. And that happens thanks to the concept called the Indus Tower, which was started in India. And that's great strategic innovation brought down the cost of operation to the common man. Because infrastructure sharing is the most important piece. Two things he did it. Massive rollout in a very less limited time. Second thing, it just ensured the cost of operation in Akhil's word, it is a minutes factory. Okay, and it has just transformed. So thank you very much. I'm really honored to have been called here, honored to have led the Indus Towers for 7 long years. And today, it is one of my dream baby. Everywhere, Indus is in me. I'm out of Indus, but Indus is in me. And Telecom has become a part of me as a result of Indus. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot, Akhil.
Thank you.
And let me also add that Shanta and we and all together, we started the Tower Association TIPA. And we had Akhil as the chairman of the association. And he was so fair. He is the one man who thinks well above any particular company affiliation. I would like to accolade Akhil for going well beyond the scope of his own entity or corporate that he is managing. I think this is something which all of us should learn, that in the industry, if we have to grow, networking, sharing, and working together is a far better way than hitting out at each other.
I know I can't tell so many stories, which I can share only with others. Indus would not have been standing today but for Akhil. That much I can tell you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Can we have the later on? Can we have the toast? And can I also have a glass? So here is for, perhaps I should have asked all of you to come here on stage. So may I request everybody who's on the first row to please come on the stage so that we can be. No, I thought कि वो camera के अंदर, it will be.
All good, all good. I can't take it from the touch screen.
हाँ, आ रहे हैं। वो तो सेंटर में उनको कर देंगे। आइए। हाँ, आइए सर। सर इधर आइए बीच में।
कैसे हैं आप?
मैं इधर आ जाता हूँ। जनरल भट्ट, आप भी आइए। And may I request everybody to please stand up and with their glasses and And here is to 30 years of telecom industry. Cheers. Yeah. A big round of applause, please. Can I request first? Vipin ji, why don't you stay on so that you, I know there are. We have 4 more speakers, I think, left. And may I just request them to perhaps, for a minute or two each, if they can. Vipin ji, why don't you share? 3-4 लोग बच गए थे तो वो गोयल साहब आप भी आ जाइए हाँ जनरल भट्ट आप भी आ जाइए और बालाजी हाँ एक एक करके let's just spend.
Good evening, everybody.
Okay, so just, do minute each from a few people. Sorry, we have overrun the time. So may I request you to take your seats so that we can have, yeah.
Hope everybody can hear me. Okay, thank you. What I'm going to do is that I'm going to talk about text and the voice and data. That's what telecommunication is all about. 1977, first of all, let me do the pleasure of what I came here for. My wife asked me, where are you going? I said, I'm going for the marriage of daughter of, Pradip Gupta. So, I said, क्या हुआ? मैं बोला 30 साल की हो गई, बड़ी मुश्किल से शादी हो रही है. And I think he will tell me who is the groom now, whether voice, text, or data, or AI, or what. I mean, because every 11 years, the sun actually changes polarity. Okay, and that's how telecommunication is. So the 77, there was a ban by United States on technology import. We built the country's first computer, TIFR, TDC-31, that was Rajesh Khanna's honeymoon suite. And people were crazy, they were working we did not know what digital switch is, but everybody was on the floor, coding, writing, testing. We figured out all the way how to build a switch. 100 days happened, and the Pradhan Mantri, PM Rajiv Gandhi was to be shown the, line-to-line call. And we were not sure whether it will work because in the lab it was stopping and working and all of that. And here is the Prime Minister who's going to be there. And we had a guy who said, even if it doesn't work, world will stop, the call will go through. I said, why? Because don't worry about it. That's a secret. So actually the Prime Minister came, 100 days of existence of this organization. We have shown line-to-line call. And then it became, rural exchanges were built. Then we had the maxes, which is meant for city, 40,000 line exchange. All of this was the basis of telecommunication in India.
Absolutely.
Right? And so I started with text and then came to voice. But we could only get to 20 billion subscribers. Right? After that, the voice and data came. That was the time. And I saw the first cover of this magazine. And I said, this is Indian magazine. The cost was less than 50 rupees for the institution. It used to come to all of us. And this was the landmark in my journey of actually journalism and media for telecommunication. Congratulations and thank you.
Thank you very much.
Then came about,
was such a pioneer, absolutely.
Absolutely. Then came about the telecommunications through the GSM, actually wireless.
I'm sorry, I think we have to.
Right, I'm going to wind up very, very quickly. Today, what I definitely want to say, what is the future? Anything that was on wire has gone on the wireless. Anything that is on wireless is actually going to consolidate and become commodity. That's why we have to decommoditize the telecommunication in future. It means that creating the use cases, forgetting the past success and creating new successes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Vipin ji, I am extremely sorry that we had to. हाँ, एक मिनट में.
All right, so I think it would be amiss if I actually didn't say PG to you and your entire team, because I would call you chroniclers of the telecom journey.
Thank you.
I remember the first time I met you was in 1991. You had Data Quest, and I remember the telecom revolution hadn't started, and you took a punt on this industry in 94. So I think that shows your pioneering spirit, just like all of us are here. I started 93. I'll just take 2 minutes to say the following. If I were to live my life all over again, having started in 93, would I do anything else? Like Sandip and others have said, never ever in my life. Okay, that's number one. But this sector taught you one thing: what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. I think that's really the bottom line as far as the sector is concerned. The amount of tumultuous issues that we had to face was incredible. And the one thing that we learned very early on was bet on India, bet on the scale that India has. So we talk about wireline, and again, I was fortunate to be in the equipment side, the devices side, and eventually onto the service provider side. The one thing that we figured out was if you had to make wireline successful, you had to basically bring the price down to less than 2,000 rupees a line when it used to be 6,000. And it paid rich dividends. At least that was number one. Number two, when it came to services business, the one big rule that we had was $1 for an airline and devices less than $100. We worked overnight as technology people to make that happen around the 2001 time frame. And that's when the big push happened beyond the policies that obviously were enablers. Same thing through about 2010-11, I was CEO of Sony Ericsson at that point of time. We did not even have 1%, back to what Mr. Baijal was saying about mobile phones. Less than 1% smartphones. I remember my boss at that time was an ex-Ericsson guy called Bert Nordberg. He was coming to India. We said, no, what do we say to the media? We said, you know what? Let's make a bold statement. We believe what we can do in India. We'll say that one in every every phone sold in India, in 5 years will be a smartphone. Actually, we beat that by getting to 65%. Go back in time, Akhil, you and Sunil gave us the opportunity to sign on managed services, and it was about scale. And the one thing that we did was we started to divide towers at the rate of 1 every 7 minutes, 365 days. If you bet on the value of India, it's about the scale. It's about the never say die attitude of people. And those are two things that I would take back into the new sector that I've joined now, aviation. If you trust in India, if you trust in the fact that there's aspiration, if you trust in the fact that technology can do wonders, if you believe that people are just hungry to learn anything new that you throw at them, you'll be a winner. And that's, I think, what we are seeing here. And so that is my learning for having been 30 plus years in telecom. Thank you, PG, for this.
Thank you.
Get up and clap for Pradeep
Balaji.
and voice and data. That's what my request. Kindly rise to the celebration.
Yeah,
I think
Goyal sir.
after that,
Goyal sir
maybe
just
Goyal
wants to
sir.
say. Well, Balaji, thanks. I know you had a medical emergency, but
घड़ी देख के हम 94 की बात कर रहे हैं. I want to take back my leaders to the 1989 जब टेलीकॉम कमीशन बना था अप्रैल के महीने में, with the goal of overall development of telecom production and services equipment के साथ था. जून 89 में फर्स्ट कॉन्फ्रेंस हुई थी टेलीकॉम मैन्युफैक्चरर्स की, और उसके बाद अगले साल टीमा बर्थ हुई थी. फिर तो सारी स्टोरी आपको बताइए. थैंक यू वेरी मच.
थैंक यू गोयल साहब. जनरल भट्ट, आप कुछ बोलना चाहेंगे? By the way, can you just go through the next slide on this? Next slide. So the number portability, next one, because I just wanted to show one thing to you. Smart is green, next. The new NTP of 2011, very quickly, the entire cloud and so on. Value-added services, which became a big part of life. Mr. Modi inaugurating doing the 2014 Voice and Data Person of the Year Award. Next one. The 20th anniversary, next one, very quickly. The telecom industry, the top 10 changed once again. So, this is the list. Perhaps I'll send it to all the attendees. The smartphone tsunami, smart cities, get set for IoT, Industry 4.0, broadband for all, next. Startup boom, and today's theme included startups, next one. The 5G, which is today's conference, and the new policy which brought fibers, next one. And then the change, I think this is important, from NTP, the new telecom policy, the change to digital communications. So this is a mindset change that you can see. NDCP 2018, ease of doing business, next. The telecom manthan for skill sets, for development 25 years, next. BharatNet, next. And we end up with space. Okay, so this is where, this was my last slide.
Yes, thank you.
And I thought that I would.
So I am an odd man out here because all of you have nostalgia, but I am offering you what will happen in the future. And I would start with the call I got one day in October 2020. I had just retired, that you have to, it was from the PMO, and they told me tomorrow you should meet Mr. Bharti Mittal for something. I said, for what? There's something in space. I said, sorry, I'm a Gurkha. I'm from the infantry and the Gurkhas. I think there's something, some mistake somewhere. They said, no, you go and meet him and he will tell you what has to be done for the Space Association. That is how I got there. And here is a joke about Gurkhas. You know, Gurkhas are known to be brave, courageous people. And like Manik Shah said, if somebody says he's not afraid, either he's a Gurkha or he's telling you a lie. Now, in my Gurkha Paltan in 1947, when the paratroopers were being made, and paratroopers are those special forces who go behind enemy line, drop and attack the enemy from behind. They were looking for volunteers, so they came to a Gurkha unit, and my CO at that time said, well, 100% of my boys will volunteer. But when this para CO described, this is what you have to do, jump from an aircraft behind enemy lines and go, how many volunteers? Hesitatingly, only 50% raised their hand. So after that, there was tea, and the CO said, you're so afraid. You have to just jump with a parachute and then you have to go and land. They said, oh, there is a parachute also. So gentlemen, I landed up into communication and satellite communication without a parachute. But thanks, Bharti Airtel was there. The players were there who were there. And in just these 4 years, the best moments for us in space have been, one, the satellites of OneWeb which were launched from India. 72 of them. And the first 36 when we were launched there, Mr. Akhil Gupta along with Mr. Bharti Mittal was there. And the second was when India has launched its first rocket made by private players. And what's so special about that rocket being made by private players is that was a startup raised in 2018. Young boys from IIT, they've launched that pre-orbital rocket, and their suppliers, 40 suppliers, were all from India. What we have is a great opportunity, and thanks to ISRO, all of us here would be proud of what happened in Chandrayaan and Chandrayaan-1. But thanks to what ISRO has given us, we have an ecosystem ready to take off. And when I heard the 30-year story of what has happened in telecommunication, I'm very sure the next best place India is going to go is space, with sat communication being the backbone. Because what we see is the money is in applications and in communication. And there, sat communication will play a very, very major part. Thank you. And my special thanks to Voice and Data. First time I came for the conference, I felt like a stepson or a prodigal son, because they talked of everything about telecom, but anything to do with SATCOM. And slowly, within the Department of Telecommunication, within the communication world, SAT communication is finding its place. Thank you all for that. Jai Hind.